Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Hi, friends. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your practice. Thank you, as always, for your support. Remember, a few seconds to like and subscribe is a Bodhisattva act in that it helps us propagate with the YouTube algorithms. Yes? So thank you for that. World peace. In many ways, so many ways, I talk about this all the time, but I've identified it as something separate from the term most of us have heard, Kozen Rufu, which has kind of been adopted and propagated through a certain sect and groups. But you can look up Kozen Rufu in this book, Buddhism reference. But world peace is certainly a concept not foreign to Buddhism. It's the very foundation of Siddhartha Gautama's initial inspiration to find a governing fundamental truth. Yes, and that everyone, no matter what their state or class or color or whatever, that every living being could attain a fruitful, fully expressed life, free of the encumbrances of whatever it is that causes us pain, stress, anxiety, so on and so forth, right? And that's the foundation of Buddhism, the idea being that if the individual can live a full life, whatever that is for that individual, right? Because we're all different. Then ultimately, what reason would we have for unrest and war and violence and, right, all of the human behaviors of samsara that all grow from the idea or the impetus to have, own, amass, right? It all comes down to how we identify the very nature of being. You can call it self, you can call it ego, you can call it I, whatever. But this is the meat, the bulwark of Buddhism, yes? And it would take Siddhartha 6 or 7 years of study with every leader, spiritual school he could follow, and ultimately be unsatisfied, leading to another 6 years of his own deeply introspective practice to find this truth. And that is what we discuss. Shakyamuni's teaching of the Lotus Sutra, the final or the ultimate teaching, no longer meant to appeal to other people's capacities, but in the Lotus Sutra, this is how I did it, this is how anyone can do it. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. And it took another 2,500 years, as he knew it would. He foretold this, that it would take at least 2,500 years after his extinction for humans to develop the capacity on their own. That all humans have this innate ability to experience life in this way, but it's so buried underneath the constant distraction of samsara, yeah? It's how we come to be. This the very, as we've talked about energy and origination and the nidana, we've covered this topic so many different ways. The very nature of existence is the samsaric engine that keeps us tied into it, right? But with our minds, our sentient minds, we can observe that process without being mired in it. Like my analogy I've used many times, being in the rapids in your kayak and negotiating every little wave and turn so you don't smack your head against a rock or turn over and all of that. You can experience the fury and the sound and the smells and the wetness and the speed and the thunder of the rapids by standing on the shore next to it. You don't have to be in it. And you might say, well, you don't really know the rapids unless you're in it. Well, okay. But do you see that the analogy being that the rapids don't go away just because you're standing next to them? Your experience, far different. You can watch a log go down the rapids and just narrowly miss things and crash into things, and you can get a pretty damn good idea of what it might be to be in them. In fact, you might even understand the rapids more clearly and appreciate the power of the rapids and the fact that you don't have to be in it risking your life to know what the rapids signify, are a manifestation of. So it's not a bad analogy for samsara, the life of an ignorant, right, human being, a sentient mind that doesn't know that there's another way to observe this process we call life, versus the Buddhist path to enlightenment, to awakening, to standing next to the rapids. Oh, now I'm free to experience life without the impediments of near death constantly. I have an appreciation for it, but I don't gotta be in it. Right? Yeah. And that is liberating. That affords for you the opportunities all around, unfettered, unconditioned, uninfluenced by the rapids. Influenced only in understanding their existence and how they work, but not influenced by the vicissitudes constantly distracting and owning your mind. All right. So why does that refer to world peace? But could you even imagine a household? Start small. A city, a town, a state, a country, a world where more and more people were aware of this mind of observation and compassion. How do you think that would change society, culture, right? We approach this dialogue with the 10 worlds and the 3,000 realms in a single thought moment. It's all about this influences. How do you conduct, behave, understand your awareness of the process of life, the engine of life? All right. So I have two bullet points here. The first is world peace, a state when the population of humans on Earth learn conflict resolution through amicable and mutually beneficial means without the use of force or violence. It's hard to contest that statement, isn't it? Buddhist or non, wouldn't you agree that world peace would be a condition where the humans on Earth learn conflict resolution through amicable and mutually beneficial means without the use of force or violence? We can all agree to that, whether or not we can imagine it, let alone accomplish it. Well, right? the subject of fantasy. Second bullet point, an abstract goal of Buddhism achieved through the widespread practice of personal equanimity and the cessation of cravings and clinging. And that's the fundamental that Siddhartha came to, right? If people stop craving and clinging to things, then there's little need for competition, right? If there's resources to be shared, then the sharing, the compassionate view of all life, to share and exploit resources for everyone, well, that helps everyone. Rather than, these are mine, you can't have them. Oh, I'll give them to you, but for this. Right? That's all clinging and craving. Do you see the everyday application of this thinking? So let's go on with whatever I read. It's been a while since I wrote this in the book, so before I start repeating myself, let's go ahead and read what's in the book. This term is a modern interpretation of the ultimate goal of Buddhist practice through the achievement of Bodhisattva training in life. Essentially what I've been saying. For the full expression of Shakyamuni's teaching of enlightenment to be experienced, it is necessary that the practitioner is not only accomplished in practice, but also that his environment acts to support his or her awakening, right? We're not separate things, as we've discussed. So as we practice to hone and train our Buddha mind to remain present in our samsaric activities, right? Work, thinking, deeds, so too do we affect and effect our environment. We influence and we change hearts and minds. People start being attracted to us to find out, what is it that makes you different? That's from ignorance. Other Buddhists might be attracted to us to say, what is it you're doing that I'm not getting? Right? However it attracts to you, that is the ultimate law, Myoho Renge Kyo. And so then at some point you're going to have to help those people understand for themselves, right? We don't really teach, we share. First thing we do is we share Daimoku. First thing. When and if that takes hold, then the mind of the other is opened. The Gohanzon starts to creak open, yeah? And we share some more, because the teaching, as I always say, is happening within our own mind. Our Buddha mind is teaching our samsaric mind. We are of two minds. It's the same mind, but for the purposes of moving from ignorance to enlightenment, we are teaching our self, our samsaric self, how to exit samsaric's cravings and clingings through the Gohanzon portal to an equanimity and understanding of all life as though it is our own, because it is. Remember what Shakyamuni said, to treat those others as though they were our only child. Whew, that's a tall order, right? All right, let's go on. In the practical sense, this is the Bodhisattva mission, to fully realize enlightenment by way of raising the awakening in others in his environment. This is the Buddha way. In a version of the Lotus Sutra, translated by H. Kern, 1884, so this is an old translation. It's one of my favorites because H. Kearn's translation of the Lotus Sutra in the 19th century, and we're in the 21st now, so this is rather dated, but it was at a time when the influence of the Church of England and Christianity in the West was, it still is, but it's more obvious in these older writings that the language, the rhetoric, even though this is a scholar, an academic scholar, reading and infatuated with the Lotus Sutra, he can't help but use the language that he's learned culturally to describe what he's translating. So you get these very direct words, like faith and these ideas of belief systems and on, all this rhetoric from religion, but he doesn't. You could see right through it. He's just struggling to capture this teaching with the only language and rhetoric he knows. And it's really obvious in his translation. What's less obvious is the modern translations of a lot of scholars, academicians, who I suspect are, and it's quite obvious, are using this old religious, Western religious rhetoric to enamor the Western audience to Buddhist thinking, but they're doing a great disfavor to us because they're continuing the guise of religion and infecting Buddhism with it, and it's totally inappropriate. I talk about this so much. I just mention it now to remind you as we read this quote from H. Kearn. So it goes like this. It's from a translation held today at the Sacred Books of the East, Volume 21, a statement: "The wise man who has heard this law should be constant in observing it. If he earnestly strives after a peaceful life, Lotus of beings will surely protect him." Right? This is a direct quote of H. Kearn's translation, and you can hear in it what we talk about all the time. The environment is full of influences, and as we influence with our conviction, our resolve in practice, the environment will support that activity. That's what that means, right? Now, another quote of H. Kearn's from the Lotus Sutra, from the Peaceful Practices chapter, right? We all know that one. His translation reads as follows: "Further, Manjushri, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, who, after complete extinction of the Tathagata at the end of time, the last period, the last 500 years, that's you and I, by the way, when the true law is in a state of decay, in danger of being lost altogether, right, is going to propound this Dharmaparyaya, must be in a peaceful state of mind, and then preach the law, whether he knows it by heart or has it in a book. In his sermon, he will not be too prone to carping at others, not blame others preaching friars, not speak scandal nor propagate scandal. He does not mention by name other monks, adherents of the vehicle of disciples, right? The Sravastabha and learning realization, these other groups of, we learn about them in the life conditions, 10 realms, 10 worlds. He does not mention by name other monks, adherents, blah, blah, blah. He cherishes even no hostile feelings against them because he is in a peaceful state. I wonder how we'd feel about Nichiren. All who come, one after the other, to hear the sermon he receives with benevolence and preaches the law to them without invidiousness. He refrains from entering upon a dispute, but if he is asked a question, and this is very important, I think this is where my reference to Nichiren will matter to you. He refrains from entering upon dispute, but if he is asked a question, he does not answer in the way of those who follow the vehicles of disciples. On the contrary, he answers as if he had attained Buddha knowledge. Right? Answers very straightforward. No bull crap. You're asking me a question about independent Nichiren practice as opposed to these, right? Then I'm going to answer you head on. Why, how, what we're doing here. This I do, and this isn't, I'm outside of the quotation now. This I do myself because I take Nichiren's instructions to heart. He tells you and me, practice as I do. Emulate me. This is Nichiren saying this. And what do we see in all of Nichiren's letters and communications? He points out the erroneous views. Because if you're going to practice correctly, you need to know that the salesman, the religious traditions that have infected this correct teaching should not have a hold on you. They should not sway you. You should see right through them because they are not the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. This is why Nichiren is so important to our modern practice. And so when people and organizations call themselves followers of Nichiren's doctrine, even declaring that Nichiren is the Buddha himself, and therefore they practice Nichiren's Buddhism, they're heinously wrong. Nichiren never claimed that. Nichiren spent his whole life, read his letters, it's very obvious. Nichiren's entire life was dedicated to being a personage, an impersonation, and an emulation of, right, Bodhisattva perfect practices, one of the leaders of you and I, the Bodhisattvas of the earth. To do what? Practice Shakyamuni's Lotus Sutra Buddhism. That is what we practice. And with Nichiren's enlightenment, his elucidations, his scholarship, and his example, more importantly, we emulate Nichiren's practice of Shakyamuni's Lotus Sutra Buddhism. Yeah. And this is the quote from Peaceful Practices says this. This is peaceful practices, right? Practice equanimity, practice kindness. Love one another in this practice as we all work diligently to achieve our awakening. But if somebody asks a question, don't shy away. Just go, well, you may not like this. No. If somebody asks you a direct question or challenges you, you must, with the conviction of Buddha-ness, simply state the truth. That's all. That's very powerful. He says, don't engage in argumentation, simply state the truth. If the person wants to continue to argue, now that's their problem. You don't need to engage with that. Chant, continue on your path. Right? That's what that's saying. And there's a lot more to it. That's just one part of the chapter, yeah? So I continue in the book. These are examples of the rhetoric in chapters like Peaceful Practices and others that imply this eventuality of Buddhist practice, leading ever more toward an awakening of mankind to live life free of cravings and clinging. And you can see life condition in this book. See that entry. Logically, a populace freed from craving and clinging attachments, at least in great numbers, has the potential to resolve differences and conflicts to amicable agreements without resorting to reactionary defensive aggression or violence. Isn't that logical? Remember, Buddhism is about the mind, attitude, and intent, but it's about reason, right? There's no magic, no mysticism. It's a reasonable mind, reasoned solutions. It is possible then to envision, with time, a de-escalation of the defensive postures of people, gradually influencing the posture of nations, and to dismantle the military-industrial complex as unnecessary. I don't say that we're close to that happening, but we're close to finding a tipping point, I think. In our world today, in the last few decades, the amount of energy, time, rhetoric, monies spent on the military-industrial complex. We were cautioned about this many decades ago by one of the great leaders in the world, of the United States, yeah? And it's been repeated many, many times, but it seems as though no one's listening. And the rise of authoritarianism throughout the world is bringing this to the fore more and more. I don't know how close we'll get to the tipping point. Right? The big question is, will we cross that tipping point? We may already have. The only thing I know with confidence is that it is this teaching and our dedication to manifesting Buddhahood that is the only hope of altering that course. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. This I know deep within my heart and mind. Governance, I continue, could be moved from a preoccupation with possession and control to creating a safe and healthy environment for the human race and for life to flourish. The valuation of human life could rise to be the only objective of a well-governed people and a planet. How amazing would that be? Look at the nation of Bhutan. In their constitution, happiness is the highest order of the civilization there. So it's not a fantasy. It can be done. I'm not saying they're doing everything right. I'm just saying it's one of the laws of the land in Bhutan. This is the implied goal of Bodhisattva practice, achievable through propagation of Lotus Sutra Buddhism. And then again, the reference, see Kozen Rufu. So, as relates to our modern Buddhist practice, that is world peace. To develop each and every one of our sentient minds to be governed by our observer, our Buddha mind. I don't say it's an easy task, but it's a task that requires regularity, consistency. This is why daily practice is so important. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Yeah, with a gratitude I can't describe. Please understand, when I thank you, I mean thank you. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. It is you and I that are changing the world. You have to have that conviction, that kind of strength and depth of feeling. This is why I say savor your practice. Don't go to your Butsudan. You've taken the trouble to create an altar, put up a Butsudan, enshrine your mandala, and then you're going to sit there and go, meow, 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 meow. What? Right? Take it seriously. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Not think every character, myo, what does it mean? Potential, ho, manifest that potential. What potential? Buddhahood. Renge, oh yeah, that's how this works. I'm invoking my very highest potential, my full potential, influencing my environment. Feel it radiating out of your body and mind into your environment. Kyo, I'm in it. I'm experiencing it. With every daimoku, Namu, I'm here to do this. Now invoking Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge. Right? If you're just mumbling through it, really. I've said it before, so if you haven't heard it before, it's not new. I say it at the end of these videos in writing, right? Savor your practice. It is essential for your future and the future of life, sentient life. The planets will go on, stars will explode. It's the engine of life. But will there be any sentient observer? What else matters to you and I? We have a very unique position in all of this. And with our Buddha mind, we can exploit it, not in a negative way, exploit it for all of its magnificent experience. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thanks again. In that regard, of course, be kind to yourself. Take care of your health. How else can you practice with that energy, that resolve, that conviction? Yeah? In that regard, your support for continuing this resource, for adding to it. You're buying ebooks on threefoldlotus.com or print books, or your participation in a Patreon or PayPal to support this channel. It's so critical. Bodhisattva work, yes? I will do my best to honor your commitments. Believe me, this is all I do. And so your comments are especially useful in that regard. So thank you for that. All right. Once again, we're almost done with this book. We're getting toward the last terms now, and the next one will be Wu Ji, and then Yin Yang. Not necessarily Buddhist terms, but thought ideas that work well within our Buddhist framework. So we'll talk about those, and then we'll get into some, words, rhetoric that doesn't work and that kind of thing. That's all in the back of the book. And then I have to set to work on the next project. So give me your thoughts and ideas on what that might be. Okay? In the meantime, take care of your health, take care of your friends, be kind, love yourself and everyone else. Yes, you can do that. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out, maybe it's the chemistry. It's time to break up so I can make a better me. Better believe in your mind, cause it's everything. You can mold, shape, find almost anything. All it takes is some time and some clarity to find your identity. It's mind over everything. And when I feel like this, I'm immortal. When I feel like this, I'm immortal.